Hi, I'm Tim Spann. Today I'm going to be talking about codeless generative AI pipelines, how you can do them without having to write much code at all. And I am a principal developer advocate and work with a lot of different code. And you'll get these slides if you're interested in finding out what I'm doing, when, where, why, how to get the source code. We'll give you access to all of that. Quick agenda. We did our intro. We'll do an overview, cover the parts of a generative AI architecture that make sense, cover some open source projects, do some demos, give you some resources, and I will be available for Q&A in the virtual world. And one way you can do that is through our Slack group. Join my Slack. You can also use the bot that I use in the demo so you can see how to run these things in the real world. And when you have data flowing in these pipelines, there's a lot of things that really help out generative AI. One is getting that data that you need for the external context. This is ingesting it, routing it where it needs to go, clean it up, enrich it, transform it, parse, chunk, vectorize, and this can be structured, unstructured, semi-structured, binary, audio, documents. Generally, we get this into a good format and get it into something like Milvus, where it can be easily queried, where it can be accessed, where you could do nearest neighbor searches and similarity searches in a ton of different ways to get the data that you need when you need it. We can also help you build those prompts you need to send to your LLMs, and part of that is getting this context that's already been inserted, so we do that retrieval as part of the retrieval augmented generation, and to be able to round trip to different systems like Slack and REST and SQL databases, Slack, so you can get your data where it needs to go without having to write code all the time. So writing that in Python is not super hard, but it's something else you can look at. One of the main open source tools out there that we like to use is something called Apache NiFi. That is in version 2 right now. It is in a late beta, but this includes some pretty powerful use of Python. So codeless, but maybe you put in a little bit of code sometimes, make things easier. Or as a provider, maybe someone's writing the code, like maybe different companies write one for their database, like, Milvus has one for Python, whoever does something for something else. Stream Native has one for Python, for Pulsar. Get the idea. We're on the latest JDK. There is a lot of cool features in here, and we'll show you that in the demo. I wrote a little bit of Python with the help of some awesome libraries on Hugging Face, covering natural language processing, Spacey, PyTorch, and these will let us get company names out of text, and you'll see why we may want to do that. Also, I have one to caption images. This comes in handy when someone uploads a file, and what does it say? Fortunately, there's a pretty good library out there for that, which is nice. Another one is for classifying images, like, what's in this image? Car, person, what have you. And fortunately, there's a nice one that works with PyTorch and some transformers, pulling that off of Hugging Face. And what's nice is, again, this is code you don't have to write, because I wrote that processor for you. Got another one to make sure that there's no rude images that we don't want getting uploaded to our system. So fortunately, this model works reasonably well in detecting bad images, and we can just delete those, or not safe for work images. Whatever you want to do with images is fine. Just don't upload them to our work systems where we're doing generative AI there. Checking facial emotions. Again, if you're you're taking a Zoom call you had, and you want to grab all the information from it, maybe from some of the stills, you want to see, well, was everyone in the Zoom meeting happy? And you could find out. Again, just something you can run or not. Once we have it all in NiFi, enriched and transformed and ready to go, you could start moving that data along, distributing it to other people who need it, whether they're in Python or Go or in Spark or Flink or NiFi, Kafka Streams. Ton of different people can consume Kafka messages. So once I get my data into Kafka, we're ready to go. Obviously, the name Kafka is taken from the brilliant novelist, and I visited his museum in Prague, which was amazing. I highly recommend it. Also recommend this project. It just works. You just put data in, you get it out, distribute it wherever you need to go. Now, if you want to follow along with some of the examples, NiFi is available in a Docker. It's got the latest versions we have there. Very easy to get that running. Runs with SSL and username and password by default. So don't be surprised when it prompts you to do stuff there. Now, I'll show you a bunch of examples, but I have a ton more. So if you're interested in looking at some other ones, I've got this one documented on Medium. Shows you how to take images from street cameras, run YOLO 8 on them, thanks to Ultralix, and run some Python processing, have that run through NiFi, send that into Minio or S3, and do some additional enrichment on it. And it's, low code there, a little bit of Python. Thank you for coming through the slide portion. Again, I wanted to get through this quickly so we're not taking up too much time on slides. You will get these slides so you could look more in depth, and then we'll show you where the source code is. And if you're curious and you're like, well, you got a lot of source code, I do have a lot of source code. So if you're looking at other demos you might be interested in, just come to my GitHub. There's a ton of ones out here for street cameras and real-time transit and real-time transit in Ireland and a whole bunch of other stuff, how to use Apache Iceberg, working with the Google Gemma model, some stuff for Pulsar, whole bunch of different stuff here. But let's do some demos, show you what all this stuff is about. Now, this is my Slack group. It's a free one. What are you going to do? But if you ask anything in this Ask Flankbot area, this is going to get ingested by NiFi, and we'll walk through that. And depending on what it is, it'll do different things. Like, what is the current value of AMD stock? I just want to test it out. Also, we have things like I could find transit. Right now, I only have it plugged into 2 systems, which are systems relative to places I've recently done talks at. So those are high priority. One is in Dublin. The other is in Boston. So if I do anything with Boston, I have that coming in. So we could take a look at that. We could also do things like what is the current weather in New York City, which is the closest major city to me. And if you look, we're getting replies, but let's not jump the gun. So we got replies back from my question, and that's from our bot, and that Slack bot is running here in NiFi. But I'm going to open up a new window so we could start from scratch, and we'll go to the interface. This is Apache NiFi. Ooh, something failed. I got to take a look at that, but we'll look at that later. This is the UI. You can see the summary of things that are currently running. Where is my data? But let's try to trace what happened when I typed in a request from the Slack group. So that's all handled here, and all my chat comes through here. This is a listener listening to receive events, and this receives this using Slack's 2.0 interface, which is a nice one. But so I don't have multiple people stepping on each other, maybe losing some of the messages. I push all these messages right to Kafka, and those come in as JSON. Now, if this is for whoever wants it, they're getting those requests and they'll process it. For these first one, it's going two ways. We got one set of messages going through Kafka to get processed somewhere else, and some are going through my regular LLM processing pipeline, which is a lot of enrichment and routing steps, but I've found out that I need to do that for my use cases. So the first thing I do out is pull out from the Slack message all the fields that are important to me, like what they typed, where they typed it, who they are, what time it was at, all those sort of things, so I know where, when, why. The timestamp is important because that tells me what message I was at, so I reply to the right one. And then I make sure you ask this question in the Ask the Flank bot. I don't want these everywhere. I'm sending automatic messages everywhere. I don't need that headache. And I make sure it's not one of my replies, because that happens. And I send that formatted message to Kafka as well. So now I have a cleaned up, good message. So if you don't want a raw one, you can deal with this one. And then the next thing I do, remember we talked about that not safe for work. Well, there's also one for text, which is awesome. So I'm going to call Hugging Face against this model that's pretty good at text classification. Now it's not perfect. There's a lot of these, and only a couple of them were really not safe for work. So what I should do is put that somewhere and, train an additional model or have some other filters. I'm thinking about that. That's a 2.0 project. I might do that next. Or maybe I'll put this in something like Milvus and have other processes run. And then ones that are really on my ban list, put them in a ban list. And the other ones put in a looks not safe for work, but it is bucket. So when we come in here, if it is a bus, specific questions, stock, weather, it is going through a different channel. And here I'm just cleaning it up, building out a new file, and sending this to a couple places it could be processed. Could be done by OpenAI, but I need to get a new subscription there, so I have that turned off right now. Could be done Olama, but I'm running low on memory here, so I'm not running that one. So instead, I'm running a bunch of different models at Hugging Face through their serverless endpoints. And at the same time, I'm calling Mixtral 87B, Tiny Llama, Mistral 7, and Microsoft PH3, and also a couple more models at the same time. Yes, I've got more than 4 models running at once. This one is H2 Danube. I have that temporarily disconnected. It was having some problems. Here I'm calling Metalama 3, 8B. And also I decided to call a model that's going to translate it to Spanish. And then just post that as it goes through. Where am I posting that to? Same thing. So you get a Spanish reply there too. And you get all these replies from these different models. And with NiFi, we can get what we call provenance, the data lineage of what's happening through the system. So we can see, hey, that data was processed. When, was there any kind of errors? Like this one had an error. Some of them didn't. Like this one, modified attributes. That's usually a sign that it succeeded. But this one had an error. It depends on what's going on. If there's an error, we could retry. We could call a different model. We could also try calling a different service. Hugging Face, I'm in the free tier. That could run out. Problems can happen. I could call something like Watson X or Cloudera or OpenAI or a ton of different places. But for now, again, this is for just a free use case. If some things fail, it's not the end of the world. So the results of that are sent to this little processor here, does a little cleanup, and then sends that message with the timestamp to where it needs to go. So for the ones that were doing anything against a model, we just came through here. So we could take a look, and like here, the weather. I have the weather coming through a couple models. You could see 5.3 mini over here. No real answer there. Mistral 7 gave me a little bit of generic weather. And then here, I'll show you where this came from. This is the actual weather forecast. And this is from New York City, which I determined it's that long based on parsing it. As we saw, we had those Python controls to do that. And it gave me the temperature, a little warm today. And it's a little bit of a wind, so not too bad. And you can see we got some results from other models. This is a smart one. You should look at a weather website, which we did, to get the proper weather. Shouldn't be asking a model. Here's that question translated into Spanish. And here's Metalama wanted to give me what's, average weather in New York. And it's showing me a wrong time of year because this is way off. There's no snow now. It's nice out. But we'll look and we'll show you where we got that from. We also, the models try to do whatever question you have, even if it's dumb. They'll give you the wrong answer. Again, why we should use something like Milvus. But I didn't set up Milvus for some of my questions yet. We're still working on that. I should just block it if you're asking a question like stock or buses or weather. But I like to see it calling those 7 extra models as well, just to see something you could do. The models do a little better for things like bus stops, since that doesn't change that often. I mean, it does a little bit, but I give you a rough idea what's going on with that. And then we got our actual data coming back because we parsed the location, and I did a query, and I'll show you how we did that. I got the 5 closest bus stops there, just to give you that, and then you can see a couple models answered after that. This one's pretty good. It had trolleys, streetcars. Pretty nice. That's not a bad model there. But just to give you an idea what we can do. So we saw that work through this area. One we can ask here is we'll do one for Dublin. And Dublin is in Ireland, which we will be using a slightly different query to get that. And that is over here. We have a lot of data for Irish Transit. Not too interesting for if you're not looking at transit. But there are lots of different transit systems in the world. Most of them we can ingest real time with NiFi. Pull out that data. Do lookups against database tables, to enrich it, push it into Kafka, merge the records. I have a cache system set up so that I can display this in a dashboard. Also push some of the records into Slack. Again, pushing 1,300 messages into Slack is not usually people's favorite things. I don't do that too much. Just a couple is plenty there. Otherwise, you're just flooding it with messages and not very exciting ones we get from these train reports here. Yeah, maybe I should stop that. They probably don't want to send in hundreds of these messages. But you can see they're still updating. There was a couple made it through. And those have lat long, what's going on. Again, it makes sense for, is a good way to distribute your data there. Now, the other one, we showed you this one. This is how we got the input coming in from Slack and how we called models. Now, we also have a place where we're getting the current trains. And this system also pushes into that Slack. But I think more interesting is I'll show you how we got those buses and how we got the other components we were looking at. Remember I said I pushed it to Kafka? So I'm reading the that topic, pulling out the fields that I need, pulling out just the text. And here I'm using a couple of different ways to try to get people's address. Now, you should have put that in the request because it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a request for locations and not, put that in there. Because now we're in the real world here. I look and see if we get back what I think. and see what they asked for. They asked for nearby buses, so I'm going to take that information, use my address to lat long parser. If that fails, I try a backup method against the US geocensus, which isn't going to help us in Dublin, but I didn't have another backup source. If that's still empty, I try another method. If I got it, then I pass the lat long along to my bus algorithm, which is checking to see if it's Boston or Dublin. You know, I'll have some more universal here when I start ingesting more formats. But what happens is, if it's, say, for the Dublin one, I have a stored procedure in Postgres that takes a lat long and checks a table against that lat long. That's in Postgres, pretty easy to do. Then I get back 5 records, and I split them out so I can look at them individually. You can see the actual JSON here. And then, like I said, split into individual records, grab the fields that make sense, and then push this as a Slack message. I can put any text or any of those fields I want. I did a bunch of debug stuff down here, but you could just post, this is the name of the bus stop, and this is where it is and how close it is. You know, we could even put a link to an OpenStreetMap or something else there, depending on what we want to do. But pretty straightforward to get the nearby buses. For the weather's a little harder. Again, if we have that lat long, I'll use the US Weather Service. And if that worked, we're great. If not, I'll grab the forecast details, get additional information. Again, push that into Slack. Also distribute it to Kafka in case we want to do that as well. Pretty straightforward way to do that. But that's weather. And stocks. Stocks is a little more complex, and people don't always want to give you the right information. So we got to get that company name out. Call one of the services out there, if possible, and it works. They don't always work, and they give you a limited number of calls. If you get that data back, I'm going to parse it out, see if I can get additional finance and other data related to that, including Wiki. And then I'm going to push that into Slack and also Kafka, so we don't have to run this 40 times. People can share their information. If we go into like weather, like I said, you can see the real weather post happens here, as well as the ones from Generative AI. Pretty straightforward. If we look at the ones for buses, same idea. Plus we get those couple of bus ones in there, like we get over here. Pretty straightforward. If we look at some older use cases, I upload an image, and then once it's uploaded, I generate a report, and you can see some of the things we get, like an image with the items identified, metadata we might have had with that, things like breakdowns of the what's in the scenes here. Wow, I did publish a lot of them. Sometimes you shouldn't publish that many in there. But if you also look, I also do some other image analysis that we saw in those Python processors. The caption there, the what's in the image, as well as, remember we said facial. We got the facial things in there, just to give you an idea. Here we found TV, people, that sort of thing. Pretty straightforward to do this. Also wanted to show you real quick. We have some data we're pushing into Milvus, and that is available through Atu. This is a very easy to use system here. I didn't show you this one demo. We got a little time here. Again, I could show you 1,000 demos, but then we'll be here all day, and I don't think I have all day. So what I have here is something that grabs my latest articles from Medium just through an RSS feed. I convert that into JSON, grab the fields I want, convert that, parse this HTML, which is what was in that RSS, into something that's just text. And then we parse that text. And then I'm sending this to Milvus to insert it. And that's also going to publish it to Kafka, so I have it available for storing it. And then we'll also push it to Slack just to say we've had it. I also do that with PDFs. I've got a bunch of PDFs of my talks that I keep in GitHub, and we can automate pulling that out too. And then we push that into Milvus, and then we could see it here where you got the different articles, the title, a link to it. Pretty straightforward to do that. We also add a couple of dynamic fields just to show you some things like the file name, source. Pretty straightforward to do, but gives you some options there. So we do have a couple different ways to do that. Not super hard there, just to show you the art of the possible. Another thing to show you, all the different things we can work with. These are all the Python processors I wrote. One will generate synthetic data for you. We got something to call ChatGPT. Something to translate web text. A whole bunch of stuff in there. Again, extract different NLP components from text. We got things to work with Azure and AWS and Google and a whole bunch of different, like for AWS, we've got a lot to do some of their batch ML stuff, which is kind of nice. You want to upload images or audio files and have it process it. Pretty easy to do. Work with all the major databases. You need to do that. We showed you connecting to Milvus. You can connect to a lot of different things, FTP, Elastic, AMQP, whatever you need to connect to, whatever you need to read from, all in one tool, all open source. Very easy to get started. If you're looking for source code, check out my GitHub up here, or look at the articles over here for more in-depth discussions and to make it easier. Hopefully you learned a little here. Definitely reach out with questions. If there's things I can help you with, let me know. Thanks again.